Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, Cameron Bailey, CEO for the Toronto International Film Festival.
Thank you.
Here at the Toronto Global Forum. As this is a global forum, I thought I might just start off for those people who are in the room and online who may not have as much of a clear understanding of the Toronto International Film Festival. I'll give them a little bit of history.
Sure.
And then we'll kind of run into our next questions. Toronto International Film Festival is one of the largest publicly attended film festivals in the world. Roughly 500,000 people on an annual basis come in to see the festival. It was founded in 1976. TIFF has grown to be a permanent destination for film culture, operating out of the TIFF Belt Lightbox, downtown Toronto. Its mission is to transform the way people see the world through film. Now, 46 years ago, you had 35,000 people who attended, and filmgoers watched 127 films from 30 countries. The festival's grown significantly since then, to say the least, with as many, I think at its peak, at about 450 films, but a conscious decision settled you in at about 250 films on an annual basis. And now, as one of the largest, most prestigious events of its kind in the world, and recognized as the most influential film festival by many for its ability and reputation for generating what we call Oscar buzz. So many films having gone through the Toronto International Film Festival and recognized, let's say, by People's Choice, include The Big Chill, American Beauty, Slumdog Millionaire, The King's Speech, 12 Years a Slave, and one of my all-time favorites, The Green Book. The year-round programming that you offer through the TIFF Bell Lightbox offers screenings, lectures, discussions, festivals, workshops, you name it, for filmmakers from Canada and around the world. And it's a fixture in Toronto. It's an institution. It's a Canadian source of pride, I would say, and a reflection of who we are in a diverse city, in a diverse country, and it reminds us of what our cultural aspirations are. So it's a real pleasure to have this opportunity to chat with you, Cameron. And I have to say that speaking as a communications chair, I know, Catherine, you were saying that your art history major, communications major myself, I'm having a bit of a fangirl moment here. I can't actually quite believe that I'm sitting here next to you. And when I told all my TIFF girlfriends that I was going to have this opportunity, they were beside themselves. Now, 10 years ago, you became artistic director. You've been with the festival for 25 years.
That's right.
And just 11 months ago, you were made CEO.
Correct.
So you've had an incredible journey, and one that is deeply entrenched in the festival. In fact, while your predecessors have done incredible things, I think most people would say that you've been the face of TIFF. And so I'd love to hear a little bit more about your journey. You likely didn't wake up one day and say, hey, geez, I'm going to be the head of one of the largest film festivals
in the world. Not at all.
So tell us about that.
Well, thank you for the very kind introduction, Marilyn. Like more than half the people in the city of Toronto, I'm an immigrant. I came here as a child, started the third grade here. I had come from Barbados, which is where my family had been for many generations. But my parents had moved to England for their education and to work, and I was born there. And so I spent the first 4 years in England, and then Barbados, and then Canada. And I think that helped give me more of a global outlook. I'm interested in what's going on in other parts of the world. And like a lot of people in Canada generally, I'm plugged into other parts of the world as well through my work, but also through personal connections. And we try to bring that to what we do at the festival, but also to our year-round programming at TIFF Bell Lightbox. And we're also working with film clubs all across Canada through something called the Film Circuit, where we're bringing films that wouldn't reach small communities otherwise. So it's really, I think, part of our ongoing mission to bring the world through film to audiences and to make them feel a part of something bigger than themselves. I think that's something that we all want when we go to the movies. We want to connect with something that that we can recognize, but that also takes us somewhere else.
As I was looking through some of your annual reports, and I came across the mission, and I go back, 2011. So you've got 10 years worth of annual reports posted on your website. And your mission of transforming the way people see the world through film has been the same for all those years, and probably predating that. And you would know, because you've been there for a quarter of a century.
And we look at it almost every year. Every time we do a new strategic plan, we look at that mission and we test it, we probe it, we poke it, and it still works. So we're not changing it.
It keeps coming back. My own experience this year, having been to your opening night, I want to thank you so much for identifying the swimmers and for saying that that was going to be your opening night film. I know the Desjardins clients and attendees that came in from across Canada who attended. I mean, it was fantastic.
I'm really glad to hear that. I'll just say, just briefly for those who haven't seen the film, The Swimmers is a film by a Welsh-Egyptian filmmaker named Saleh El Hosseini, also global, probably the only Welsh-Egyptian filmmaker there is. And it's the story that's based on a true story of two swimmers from Syria, sisters, who as teenagers were competitive swimmers and training. Their dream was to go to the Olympics. But of course, Syria was being enveloped in war at the time. They had to flee Syria as refugees. And because they were swimmers, that actually helped them, because they had a very harrowing crossing of the Mediterranean, finally reached Europe. And the film is really about how they were able to hold on to that dream of eventually one day getting to the Olympics. And some of you may know the Rio Olympics had a refugee team. And this is a bit of a spoiler, but it's a true story, so I don't mind spoiling the movie plot. They were eventually able to make it. And it's just such an inspiring story. We know as Canadians that Canada, like many countries in the West, opened our doors to Syrian refugees. We could probably always have done more, but this was a way of humanizing what we probably saw, many of us, as a news story, and connecting it to individuals. And that's what we feel film can do every time out.
Excellent. I think the film sparked something in each person, but it's about the communal experience as well. So when you're sitting, no one would have had that same experience that these girls had, but we are all experiencing it with them, and it really breaks down all kinds of, transcends everything.
Yeah, there are many people who don't have that direct experience of having your whole life uprooted and being forced to flee your home and to try to find safety somewhere else. But the movie brings that home. Films can dramatize that in such an important way. And because it's a collective experience, and this year we were finally able to have the festival back fully in person after 2 years with hybrid versions, you're feeling that with, hundreds of other people at the same time. And there were people in the room that night, actually on opening night of the festival last month, who also had refugee backgrounds. They might have come from Syria or other parts of the world as well, and they were probably feeling something even more intense. But the power of film is that everyone, whether you've been through that or not, can connect with that experience.
You mentioned the pandemic and how as a community we have, and as a global community, we continue to move our way through this. Earlier this week, we had a session that discussed central business districts, so Toronto being a good example of that. And that as these districts have gone through a bit of a reset as a result of the pandemic, individuals are looking for opportunities to find open spaces, to have a different kind of experience within their central business districts and kind of morph from what is currently, let's say, Toronto into something different, something that might revitalize the soul. And I thought about that during that session. I thought about our upcoming chat, and that I think that there's a great connection there because there is nothing like attending the festival, being in a film that you might not have chosen for yourself, but you're there, and it's because the festival, you brought it to Toronto. So tell us a little bit about how you see TIFF being part of that reset following the pandemic.
We sat down actually around this time last year as we were planning what this year's festival would look like this past September. And one of the things we came up with was that we wanted to bring people back together. And that was the prime goal. And as part of that, we wanted to concentrate the footprint of the festival itself. So we made sure that nearly all of the venues were within roughly a 10-minute walking radius. That's important because that delivers a kind of critical mass of just energy, that intangible, amorphous thing that really matters. And it's not just about where the films are screening or where the stars and the filmmakers are on the red carpets, but it's about what happens when you come out of a screening and you've just felt something really transformative and you want to talk about it and you're just kind of electric with that excitement of having seen some amazing film or having seen a star that you've always idolized. We had Taylor Swift in town, we had Steven Spielberg, we had Harry Styles and so many others, and that was all very exciting for people. Films from over 70 countries as well. But we wanted people to be having those conversations together on the street, and in a way that they hadn't been able to do since the pandemic really forced us into so much isolation. So that kind of excitement it's bumping into strangers. We've just shared an experience. We don't know each other, but suddenly we're sharing a conversation about it. Happenstance meetings where you run into somebody you haven't seen in a long time. You're all there together for the same event. That was what we wanted to deliver, and that was really the way that we were able to bring people back together. And that can only happen in a concentrated urban environment where we have 3 major theatrical venues, plus our own TIFF Bell Light Box, plus our major press and industry venue, all within a few minutes' walk.
Thanks for that. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the session topic, inclusive growth in the arts and culture industry. And I know that this is an important topic for you, based on the history that you've had, your own personal journey. So tell me what it was about this topic that really gravitated to you and made you want to be part of today's session.
The idea of inclusive growth is both obvious, crashingly obvious and self-evident, but also something that needs to be talked about constantly because we're not there yet. There's so much more to be done. But the fact that inclusivity increases financial opportunities for companies that really embrace it, that's been proven many times through studies. We know that we get a broader and richer range of ideas and experiences when we have a more inclusive group engaging with one another. We know as a cultural organization that when we bring films, not just from Hollywood, but from 73 different countries, we bring industry delegates to town from over 80 countries around the world, just about every corner of the planet where movies are made, that's a richer experience for everyone, that ideas are exchanged, that business happens, that connections are made that last well beyond the 11 days of the festival. And so inclusivity is a part of our DNA because it works, it pays off, it just feels better, and whenever you can bring more people to the table who've got a range of experiences and a range of things that they want to contribute, that's always better. It's especially important because Canada's kind of bet on inclusivity in a big way, right? It's too late to go back now, right? We know that more than half of the people in the city of Toronto were born outside of Toronto. That's unbelievable. There are very few other cities in the world that can make that claim. But how do we draw on it now? How do we actually take the best advantage of that resource? We also know that as we're doing that, we have to look back in our own history at the engagement between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Canadians and what more can we do towards reconciliation there. On the cultural front, when it comes to film, there's been so much work done recently in the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years to just open opportunities for more Indigenous storytellers. There's been a lot of work done to understand the value and the importance of Indigenous storytellers telling their own personal and community stories, and that's a part of the mix now as well, in a much bigger way. And every year at the festival, we've got some remarkable films from Indigenous Canadians as well, and from Indigenous filmmakers all over the world. So that kind of, that mix, that richness, that inclusivity makes for, I think, a more exciting event and an event that's going to reach more people and be relevant to more people as well.
It's not something, though, that happens with the flick of a switch.
No.
And you spoke about some of the initiatives from the last 5 years. If I think of TIFF, and actually, leaders in the room thinking about their own diversity and inclusivity mandates and the targets that they're setting for themselves. those are intentional roadmaps that are being developed. Some of the good ideas that came out through the course of this forum, where leaders in the room are writing them down and thinking, I need to spend more time on this, because it doesn't happen overnight. When I think of TIFF, I think about, historically, you were the first public forum where a land acknowledgement was made. And now it is every single venue in a public sense. And TIFF was a pioneer in that. I think about your own Planet Africa, founded in 1995. So there are some historical sort of milestones. Share Her Journey, another one. So tell us a little bit about what that historical journey and roadmap has looked like to help TIFF evolve that might be useful for leaders in the room.
Sure. So we started, as you said, in 1976, and we were started by three individuals, Dusty Cole, Henk van der Kolk, and Bill Marshall, who used to attend the Cannes Film Festival in the south of France regularly, lucky them. And they kept thinking, why can't we do something like Cannes? Well, we don't have the French Riviera, so we can't offer that. But they came back to Toronto, and they wanted a festival that had the spirit of Toronto and of Canada in it. And if you go back to some of the early interviews from the late 70s and the early 80s, they were talking about diversity then, almost 50 years ago. So diversity meant something different in the 70s than it does today. But the idea that you put on a better event that attracts more people, if you're as open-minded as possible, as inclusive as possible, that was there from the beginning. And we did a number of things over the years that helped foster that. So we, for instance, had sections devoted to Latin American cinema, which introduced audiences to a lot of films from Central and South America they'd never seen before. We did something similar with Asian cinema called Asian Horizons. I started something called the Planet Africa section in 1995, as you said, which was films from the African continent and the African diaspora to cultivate an audience for those kinds of films. And we've continued to do that sort of thing. And we're also lucky on the cultural front when it comes to film is that we weren't alone. There are festivals that are devoted to all different kinds of film and different kinds of audiences and artists that make part of Canadian culture so much richer. The Imaginative Festival just opened last night in our TIFF Bell Light box in Toronto. The Real Asian Festival is coming up. One of the biggest LGBTQ festivals, Inside Out, happens in Toronto in TIFF Bell Light box as well. So we've been part of a larger community that's always seeking stories that enrich us all. And we do feel like the more you illuminate the world, illuminate various kinds of experiences, the better off we all are. And the more connected we feel as well. That's really what we try to do, is connect people through film.
It's been a long history, 46 years. And so you're now 11 months into your CEO-ship. You are leading a team of people as you pursue this great mission of yours. In a room full of leaders, as you have today and online, you've got an opportunity to talk about where we need to go next and what kind of boundaries you think, built on that history that you've just described, and being leaders insofar as inclusivity and diversity are concerned. Very tangible examples that are milestones and mile markers in your journey. Mm-hmm. What would you say about where we need to go next?
Well, this is something we think and talk about at TIFF all the time. I'm sure many people in the room and online would feel the same way. My feeling is that there needs to be a counter to the forces that are isolating us into smaller and smaller communities, into echo chambers, into spaces of fear and mistrust, frankly. In my line of work, I do feel that art can do that, culture can do that. It can open us to experiences that maybe test our boundaries and encourage us to think in ways that maybe we don't think all the time. And so that's what we do. We try to give people opportunities to connect with somebody who doesn't share the same experience. And when you're sitting together watching the same movie and then talking about it, and I loved it, you hated it, or vice versa, or I saw something you didn't see, or vice versa, or you learned something from the artist that you never even thought about, or sometimes an audience member will tell the artist something about their own film that they never thought about. And those kinds of things just keep stretching us. And in a world where it's very easy to just be, more and more isolated with, what your own social media feed tells you, what's on your phone, what your small circle is telling you, I feel like we should take every opportunity to push against that, to counter that, and to put ourselves in environments where we can learn things that we may never have thought of and that test our assumptions.
Thank you for that. I like this idea of pushing against that and really trying to dig deep into the inclusivity and diversity. When you think about your strategic plan for 2022-24, you have something with respect to the Festival of the Future. And when you talk to your team members and link that into the mission, what are some of the main points that you deliver to them?
So Festival of the Future for us means trying to understand how audience behavior is changing. We went through a good 2 years where we got very comfortable on our couches, watching a constant fire hose of content that was coming in through various streaming services, and we were largely lapping it up, frankly, because we had no other choice. But what does it mean on the other side of that, where we're still offering people the experience in theaters, that collective experience in front of the big screen? We do also have an online experience, an at-home experience that we offer. But how can that be balanced by what we think is really most important, which is gathering people together to experience culture collectively and talk about it and exchange ideas about it? So how do we take into account that the comfort of the couch is not going away, but we have to make that a part of our future as well. Also, business is being done in the screen industries and creative industries very differently than it was as well. It can be done remotely. You can make a deal with someone in Beijing or Mumbai very easily over Zoom or any other platform right now, but nothing really beats sitting down and listening and hearing from somebody else about their experience and what's important to them and their business. So we're trying to balance the online remote experience that we've all become used to with the in-person experience. We're trying to understand how Canada and Toronto continues to grow as a cultural capital and build all of those into the things that we bring to the festival experience over the next several years.
For 25 years, you've been bringing the world to Toronto. It's been an absolute delight to be able to attend the festival and see it, knowing that it's actually through your eyes. I know the fangirl's coming out in me right now, I can tell. I have a couple of rapid fire questions.
Sure, go for it.
We're coming down to the last few seconds of our session. Most memorable film from TIFF 2022?
Oh, Steven Spielberg had never been here before, and The Fabelmans is his new film. We made the world premiere. It'll be opening, I think, next month, and I loved it.
Excellent. One film you've watched over and over?
Oh, so many. I will go with a Hong Kong film called In the Mood for Love by a director named Wong Kar-wai, which is one of the most beautiful films you will ever see. It's available on various services, but if you get to see it on a big screen, even better.
Here you go, people. So you've got to take out your pens, mark these things down. Last question. One film everyone here at the Toronto Global Forum needs to see.
Ooh, I want to try to be contemporary in terms of what's out right now. We premiered a film called The Woman King. With Viola Davis. It's spectacular. It's a big action adventure movie set in the Dahomey Kingdom, and it's a lot of fun. It's quite violent, so you have to be ready for that. But it's if you want to see just some kick-ass adventure and action, that's the one. Woman King.
We won't regret it.
All right.
I certainly have loved every second of our time today. Thank you so much, Cameron Bailey. This has been an absolute pleasure, everyone. This was a treat for us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and joining us at the Toronto Global Forum.